The first time I realized my security detail knew me better than my own friends, it wasn't because he stopped a threat or tackled someone to the ground. It was because he casually said, "You're going to turn left in 3 seconds," and I did without even thinking about it. That was Cole. On paper, he was just my bodyguard. Ex-military, mid-30s, built like a guy who didn't need to raise his voice to be taken seriously. Short dark hair, permanent 5 o'clock shadow, eyes that missed absolutely nothing. He was assigned to me after my father decided my life had crossed that invisible line where money turns into risk. High-profile family, public appearances, the usual paranoid cocktail. I was Dylan, 28, CEO and title only, still trying to prove I wasn't just a privileged screw-up with a famous last name. I didn't want a bodyguard. I definitely didn't want one who seemed to know my habits better than I did. Cole knew when I skipped breakfast. He knew when I lied about being tired. He knew the exact moment my anxiety spiked before I did. At first, it felt invasive. Every morning, he was already there, leaning against the SUV, black suit, earpiece in, scanning the street like the world personally offended him. He opened doors without asking, walked half a step behind me, always close enough that I could feel his presence even when I couldn't see him. "You don't have to hover," I told him once, irritation slipping into my voice. "I do," he replied calmly. "That's the job." That word, job. He used it like armor. We didn't talk much in the beginning. He gave short, efficient answers. "Yes, sir." "No, sir." "Route's clear." "Time to move." He was professional to the point of emotional invisibility. But even then, there was something unsettling about how closely he paid attention. He noticed the coffee cup I never finished, the way I rubbed my thumb against my ring finger when I was stressed, the fact that I always slowed down near intersections, even when the light was green. "You okay?" he asked one afternoon as we waited for an elevator. I blinked. "Yeah." "What?" "You're thinking too loud." I laughed. "That's not a thing." He looked at me, just briefly. "It is for you." That was the moment I started paying attention to him. Cole wasn't just watching crowds or scanning rooftops. He was watching me, learning patterns, anticipating choices, adjusting his movements around mine like we were parts of the same machine. It was efficient, impressive, and slowly, disturbingly comforting. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Somewhere along the way, his presence stopped feeling like a cage and started feeling like structure. When he wasn't around, things felt off. Too quiet, too open. Once, he called me before I even realized I was lost. "You missed the turn," he said through my phone, voice steady. "I know." I replied automatically, then frowned. "Wait, how do you know where I am?" A pause, just a fraction of a second. "Because you always take the longer route when you don't want to think." That should have freaked me out. Instead, I felt seen. The line between professional and personal didn't snap all at once. It blurred, slowly, in moments that didn't seem important at the time. Late nights in the car, shared silence. The way his hand hovered at my back when crowds pressed too close, not touching, but ready. One night, after an event ran long, I caught him watching me in the reflection of the window. Not scanning, not guarding, watching me. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he said, turning away. "Just making sure you're where you're supposed to be." The thing was, by then, I wasn't sure if he meant physically or emotionally. And I had a strange, unsettling thought I couldn't shake. Cole didn't just know where I was every minute. He knew where I was headed. Things shifted the night I didn't go home. It wasn't planned. A meeting ran late, then drinks I didn't really want, then the familiar hollow feeling that followed me whenever my apartment got too quiet. By the time I slid into the back seat of the SUV, the city was slick with rain and neon reflections. "Home," I said automatically. Cole didn't move. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "You sure?" That alone made me pause. "Why wouldn't I be?" "You've been tapping your foot since you got in," he said. "You do that when you're about to bail on your own plans." I stared at the back of his head. "Do you keep notes on me or something?" "No," he said evenly. "I just pay attention." Silence stretched between us. The wipers swept back and forth, steady, hypnotic. "Can we just drive for a bit?" I finally said. He nodded once and pulled away from the curb without asking where. That was the thing with Cole. He always knew when to ask questions and when not to. We drove with no destination. Streets blurred together. The city thinned out. At some point, I realized my shoulders had dropped, my jaw unclenched. I hadn't felt this calm all day. You can stop if you want, I said. I know, he replied. That should have annoyed me. Instead, it made my chest feel strangely tight. We ended up parked near the river, engine idling, lights off. The skyline reflected in the dark water, distorted and broken. I leaned my head back against the seat, staring at the roof. Cole, I said quietly. Yes. Do you ever get tired of watching people? A pause. Longer than usual. People don't bother me, he said. Unpredictability does. I turned my head to look at him. He was still facing forward, hands resting loosely on the steering wheel. And me? I asked. Am I unpredictable? He exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. No, that's the problem. Something about the way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, jaw tightening slightly. What is it? I asked. Change of plans, he said. We're not going back to your place tonight. My heart jumped. Why? He finally turned to look at me fully. His eyes were sharp now, focused in a way I'd only seen once or twice before. Because someone's been asking the wrong questions, he said. And tonight, I'd rather know exactly where you are. The implication hung heavy in the air. And where is that? I asked. He held my gaze. With me. We ended up at his place. I hadn't even known where he lived. A modest apartment, clean, minimal. No personal clutter. No pictures. It felt controlled. Like him. You can take the couch, he said, already loosening his tie. Door locks. I'll be up for a while. I nodded, suddenly hyper-aware of the fact that we were alone. Truly alone. No crowds. No radios. No professional distance enforced by public space. As I sat down, I noticed something on the coffee table. A tablet. The screen was on. Maps. Schedules. My schedule. My stomach dropped. Cole, I said slowly. Why do you have dash? He stopped mid-step. That's standard, he said carefully. Advanced planning. Threat assessment. I stood up. You track me when you're not with me? His jaw clenched. Only to keep you safe. Every minute. I asked. A beat. Yes. The word hit harder than I expected. I should have been angry. Should have demanded answers, boundaries, explanations. Instead, what rose in my chest wasn't fear. It was the realization that there hadn't been a single moment in months where I'd truly been alone. And some part of me quiet, dangerous, honest had liked that. You always know where I am, I said softly. Yes. And tonight, I added, stepping closer without fully meaning to, you decided where I should be. Cole looked at me then. Really looked at me. His voice was low when he spoke. It stopped being just a job a while ago, Dylan. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. And for the first time, I understood something that unsettled me more than any threat ever could. I didn't want him to stop watching. The air between us felt too tight to breathe. Cole was still standing near the hallway, jacket draped over the chair now, sleeves rolled just enough to show the faint scars along his forearms. I hadn't noticed them before. Or maybe I had, subconsciously, filed them away like everything else about him. You should be mad, he said quietly. Should I? I asked. Yes. He didn't hesitate. I crossed a line. I leaned back against the counter, folding my arms more to ground myself than for defense. You've been crossing lines since the day we met. That's different. How? Because before, he said, voice low but controlled, you didn't know. He was right. And that was the part one couldn't stop turning over in my head. The fact that now I did know and I was still standing here. Still calm. Still feeling safer than I had in weeks. Say I tell you to delete it, I said. All of it. The tracking. The schedules. Everything. He met my eyes. I would. Immediately. No argument. No justification. And say I tell you to walk away, I continued. Quit. Hand me off to someone else. That one took longer. I'd ask why, he said carefully. But you'd do it. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Eventually. The honesty of that hit harder than if he'd lied. I let out a slow breath. That's the problem, Cole. You don't just protect me. You anticipate me. That's what keeps you alive. No, I said softly. That's what keeps you close. For the first time since I'd known him, Cole looked unsure. The silence stretched again, thicker now, threaded with something neither of us was naming. I became painfully aware of the space between us, or rather, how little of it there was. When had he moved closer? I should go, I said, though I didn't move. Yes, he agreed. Also didn't move. Another beat. I don't want you to stop, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could overthink them. I just want to know where the edges are. Cole studied my face like he was recalibrating everything he thought he knew. The edge, he said slowly, is where you tell me to stop. And until then, I stay where you can see me. That felt fair. Dangerous, but fair. I nodded once. Okay. The tension didn't disappear. If anything, it sharpened. But it changed shape less like a secret, more like an agreement. I ended up on the couch after all. Cole took the chair opposite me, not the bedroom. Professional distance, reasserted with visible effort. The tablet was gone from the table when I woke up hours later, blanket tucked around my shoulders like someone had checked on me without waking me. Morning light filtered in through the blinds. Cole was already dressed, coffee in hand. You didn't sleep much, he said. You noticed, I replied. A ghost of a smile flickered. I always do. As we rode back to my place, city waking up around us, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. Not exploded, not broken, repositioned. He still opened doors, still walked half a step behind me, still knew when I was about to turn left before I did. But now, every glance carried weight. Every quiet moment felt intentional. He wasn't just my guard anymore, and I wasn't just his assignment. Whatever this was becoming, one thing was clear. We were both choosing it. The next few days felt heightened. Nothing obvious changed on the surface. Same schedule, same routes, same events where I smiled, shook hands, played the role everyone expected from me. Cole stayed professional to the point of restraint, like he'd tightened something inside himself and locked it down. But once you notice tension, you can't unsee it. I felt it when he stood a little closer than necessary, when his hand hovered at my back longer than before, when his eyes lingered half a second too long after I spoke. And I knew he was aware of it too. The real shift came during a fundraiser downtown. Packed venue, flashing cameras, too many people pretending not to stare while doing exactly that. I hated these things. Cole knew that. You're good, he murmured near my ear as we stepped inside. Breathe. I've got you. That phrase, "I got you," landed differently now. It wasn't just reassurance. It was a promise. One I felt in my chest, steadying me more than it should have. Halfway through the night, someone grabbed my arm. Hard. I startled, adrenaline spiking instantly, but before I could even turn, Cole was there. Between us. His grip firm, controlled, not violent but unmistakably final. That's close enough, he said, voice calm but edged with steel. The guy stammered an apology, already backing away. It should have ended there. But Cole didn't move right away. His hand stayed on my wrist. Solid. Anchoring. I could feel the warmth of his palm, the faint pressure of his thumb against my pulse. He looked down at me. You okay? I nodded, but my heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with the grab. Yeah, I said quietly. I'm okay. Only then did he let go. The rest of the night passed in a blur. When we finally got back into the SUV, the silence was heavier than usual. You didn't like that, he said after a minute. I didn't mind it, I corrected. He exhaled slowly. That's what worries me. I turned toward him. Why? Because if you stop minding, he said carefully, I might stop noticing where the line is. That honesty again. Always sharp. Always disarming. Then we keep talking, I said. Like we agreed. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes. We pulled up outside my building, engine idling. Neither of us moved. Cole, I said. Yes. If I asked you to come up, I continued, heart thudding, would that still be the job? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. No. Would you come anyway? Another pause. Longer this time. Yes. The words sent heat rushing through me. I swallowed, suddenly very aware of how close we were in the darkened car. I reached for the door handle. Then don't, I said softly. His head snapped toward me. Not tonight, I clarified. I just needed to know. Something unreadable crossed his face. Respect. Frustration. Relief. All of it tangled together. He nodded once. Good call. As I stepped out of the car, I felt his eyes on me, not tracking my movement, not assessing threats. Just watching. Upstairs, alone in my apartment, I couldn't shake the realization settling deep in my gut. The danger wasn't that Cole knew where I was every minute. It was that we both knew exactly how close we were to choosing something we couldn't undo. And neither of us was pretending anymore. The call came at 2:17 a.m. I was awake already, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way Cole had looked at me before I shut the car door. The restraint in his eyes had unsettled me more than if he'd given in. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Cole. I sat up immediately. What's wrong? Nothing, he said, but his voice was tighter than usual. I wouldn't call if it was nothing. I just need you to listen. That alone sent a jolt through me. I'm listening. There was a pause. I could hear the faint hum of traffic through his end of the line. Someone accessed your calendar remotely tonight, he said. Not my system. Not yours. My stomach clenched. How bad? Not catastrophic, he replied. But intentional. Someone's checking patterns. Windows. Gaps. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. So what do we do? I'm outside, he said. I don't want you alone. That word again. Alone. I told you not tonight, I said, but there was no real heat behind it. I know, he replied. That's why I'm not coming up. But I'm here. In case. I moved to the window, pulled the curtain back just enough to see the SUV below. Sure enough, it was there. Engine off. Lights dark. He really did know where I was. Every minute. Cole, I said quietly, you don't have to do this. Yes, he said just as quietly. I do. Not because it was his job. Because it was his choice. We stayed on the phone. Didn't talk much. Just existed on opposite ends of the line. I told him when I locked the door. He told me when someone passed too close to the car. It was absurd and grounding. At some point, I realized my breathing had slowed. The knot in my chest loosened. You're calmer, he noted. Because you're there, I admitted. Another silence. This one different. Heavy with implication. Dylan, he said carefully. If this escalates, protocol changes. What kind of changes? I won't just watch, he said. I'll limit options. Control movement. You won't like it. I swallowed. Would I be safe? Yes. With you? I clarified. There it was. The real question. Yes, he said without hesitation. I leaned my forehead against the glass. Then I trust you. The word landed between us like a live wire. You shouldn't say that lightly, he warned. I know, I said. That's why I mean it. Morning came too soon. Cole left before sunrise, slipping back into his role like a second skin. When he picked me up later, he was all professionalism again, distance reinstalled, voice neutral. But something fundamental had shifted. That night wasn't about danger. It was about choice. And the truth neither of us said out loud but both understood was this. If things went wrong, if lines blurred further, if control slipped, I wouldn't run. I'd step closer. And Cole knew it. The threat didn't escalate the way I expected. No dramatic confrontations. No masked figures. No sudden chaos. Instead, everything became tighter. Cole adjusted my schedule without asking. Meetings moved. Dinners canceled. Routes changed mid-drive. He explained when necessary, but mostly he just did it, calm and decisive, like the world was a chessboard and he was already 5 moves ahead. Normally, that would have pissed me off. Instead, I let it happen. You're restricting me, I said one afternoon, not accusing, observing. Yes, he replied, eyes on the road. You said I wouldn't like it. You don't, he said. But you're not fighting me. He was right again, and that bothered me more than the restrictions themselves. The real test came when I pushed back. There was a dinner. Small. Private. People I trusted. Cole vetoed it immediately. Too exposed, he said. Too many variables. I can't just disappear, I snapped. That raises more questions than it answers. He pulled the car over. That alone set my nerves on edge. He turned to face me, posture rigid, control radiating off him in waves. This is not about optics. Someone is probing for access. Every appearance gives them data. And locking me down gives you control. I shot back. Silence. Then, very carefully, yes. The honesty knocked the air out of me. I won't pretend otherwise, he continued. But that control is focused on one outcome. Me staying alive, I said. Exactly. I searched his face, looking for anything that suggested this had gone too far. What I saw instead was restraint. Effort. A man constantly checking himself, recalibrating, holding back not because he couldn't cross the line but because I hadn't told him to. Cole, I said quietly, if I tell you no, will you listen? He didn't answer immediately. Yes, he said at last. Even if it costs me. That mattered more than he probably realized. We compromised. Smaller venue. Tighter perimeter. In and out. He stayed closer than usual, his presence a steady pressure at my side. At one point, someone brushed past me too fast. Cole's hand closed around my arm instantly, pulling me back a step. Protective. Automatic. Intimate. I felt it then, the click. The alignment. He wasn't just reacting to threats. He was reacting to me. Afterward, in the car, neither of us spoke for a long time. You trusted me, he said eventually. Yes. And I didn't abuse it. No. Another pause. That's new for me, he admitted. I turned toward him. What is? Being given control and choosing restraint anyway. Something warm and dangerous settled in my chest. You don't want power, I said. You want responsibility. He glanced at me, surprised. Yes. That night, back at my apartment, I didn't invite him up. But I didn't go inside right away either. We stood there, city humming around us, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body. Cole, I said softly. Yes. If this ends badly, Dash. I know, he interrupted. It will. I met his eyes. Would you still do it? He didn't hesitate. Yes. That was the moment I understood the truth of us. This wasn't about obsession, or surveillance, or control. It was about two people standing at the edge of something intense and choosing again and again not to look away. And knowing, deep down, that when we finally stepped over that line, neither of us would be pretending it was an accident. The line finally broke on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic about the day itself. No threats. No alerts. Just rain, traffic, and a schedule that refused to slow down. By the time we pulled into the underground garage beneath my building, I was exhausted in that bone-deep way that makes pretending impossible. Cole cut the engine but didn't get out right away. You're running on fumes, he said. So are you, I replied. I'm trained for it. I huffed a quiet laugh. That doesn't mean you're immune. Silence settled between us, familiar now. Comfortable. Charged. Cole, I said, staring at my hands. Come upstairs. He went still. That's not Dash, he started. I know. I interrupted, finally meeting his eyes. I'm not asking you to stay. I'm asking you not to disappear behind the roll tonight. A long pause. I could practically hear him weighing consequences, protocols, futures. 15 minutes, he said at last. Door stays unlocked. Lights on. I nodded. Deal. Upstairs, my apartment felt different with him in it. Smaller. Warmer. Like the walls were aware something important was happening. He stayed near the door at first, posture rigid, hands loosely clasped like he was holding himself back through sheer discipline. I poured 2 glasses of water, handed him one. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us moved away. You're not shaking, he observed. I'm not scared, I said. That's what scares me. I stepped closer. Not touching. Just enough that I had to tilt my head to look up at him. You once said the edge is where I tell you to stop, I said quietly. Yes. And until then, you stay where I can see you. His breathing changed. Barely, but I noticed. I can see you, I continued. Right here. With me. Not watching. Not guarding. Just being. Dylan, he warned softly. If I say stop, I said, you will. Yes. The certainty in his voice steadied me. So I did the simplest, bravest thing I could think of. I leaned in and rested my forehead against his chest. That was it. No kiss. No rush. Just contact. Cole drew in a sharp breath, muscles tensing beneath my hand. For a heartbeat, I thought he might pull away. Instead, slowly like it cost him something, his hand came up and rested against my back. Open palm. No pressure. No claim. Grounding. Protective. Present. We stood there like that, the world narrowing to breath and warmth and the quiet hum of everything we hadn't said yet. This changes things, he murmured. I know. You can't unknow it. I don't want to. Another pause. Then, reluctantly, he stepped back. Time, he said. I nodded, heart pounding, but steady. Thank you for stopping. He met my gaze, something fierce and tender crossing his face. Thank you for trusting me enough to let it get that close. At the door, he hesitated. This isn't over, he said. No, I agreed. It's just honest now. After he left, I leaned against the door, hand pressed to my chest, a slow smile spreading across my face. Because the truth was clear as day. Whatever came next, danger, distance, consequences, we'd already crossed the hardest line. Not the physical one. The one where two people choose to see each other fully. And stay. The situation resolved itself quietly. That was the strange part. Cole found the source within a weakened outside contractor skimming metadata, opportunistic, sloppy. Not a mastermind. Not a shadowy enemy. Just someone who thought proximity to power meant easy access. Law enforcement handled it. Lawyers buried it. Life, on the surface, went back to normal. But we didn't. The intensity didn't fade with the threat. If anything, it clarified things. Without danger as an excuse, everything between us stood exposed and undeniable. Cole eased the restrictions, gave me choices back, asked instead of decided. Every time he did, I noticed the effort it took him. Control wasn't something he wielded casually, it was something he carried carefully. One evening, weeks later, we ended up walking instead of driving. No security sweep, no rush. Just the two of us moving through the city like ordinary men. You don't have to do this, I said, gesturing around us. I know, he replied. I want to. That distinction mattered. We stopped at a corner Fradka, sat outside, talked about nothing important. Coffee got cold. Sunset bled into night. For the first time since I'd met him, Cole looked unguarded. I won't always be your detail, he said eventually. I nodded. I know. That day will come, he continued, eyes steady on mine. When I have to step back. Entirely. And when it does, I said, heart tight but sure. I won't ask you to stay in a role you don't belong in. He studied me, searching for something. What would you ask? He said. I took a breath. I'd ask you to stay in my life. As yourself. That was the moment. The real one. Not when he protected me. Not when he touched me. But when the job finally stopped being the framework for everything we were. He reached across the table not to grab, not to pull, just to rest his hand over mine. Solid. Warm. Intentional. I can do that, he said. No drama. No grand promise. Just truth. Later that night, when we stood outside my building again, it felt different than before. Lighter. Less charged. Somehow more intimate. I know where you are, he said softly. I smiled. You don't have to anymore. I know, he replied. But I like knowing. I leaned in and kissed him then. Simple. Unrushed. No urgency. Just the quiet certainty of two people finally stepping forward instead of holding the line. When we pulled apart, Cole rested his forehead against mine. For the record, he murmured, it was never just about watching you. I smiled, heart full and steady. I know. Because the truth, the one that would always stay with me, was this. He'd known where I was every minute. But what mattered most was that, in the end, he chose to stay, not because it was his job, but because it was where he wanted to be.